So a lot of great phones came out this year, and I really can't think of a year in recent memory where there have been so many absolutely fantastic phones. That makes making a list of top phones really kind of difficult. If you've been watching my channel, I bet you think you have got the answer to which one is number one for me. But I might surprise you. Hey there, friends on YouTube. My name's Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest, it hurts. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down there and the bell notification so as you will be notified. First, I have to say that we here at Painfully Honest Tech, we're still kind of a small channel. There is no way that I could have been able to afford to review every phone. As it is, I have been sort of pulling this thing out of my rear end to get a hold of the number of phones that I've been able to get a hold of. And these are the three that I still have. I've got the Note 8, I've got the iPhone 10, got the LG V20. I will have on this list a couple of phones that I did have at one time, and they make the list for various reasons that I will go into as we go. But suffice it to say, what I'm looking at here is in no way a complete list of all the phones that came out in 2017, and I don't want to say good or bad things or recommend one way or the other phones that I haven't necessarily used. Most of this list is based on what I prefer about each phone and how that helps me make comparisons between all of them. As the channel grows, I really hope to be able to feature a wider range of phones, and the only way I can do that is if you do, in fact, subscribe and help me grow and do those kinds of things. So, I'm going to start with number 5 and count down, if that's okay with you. Let me know what you think down in the comments when I get done with my list. Tell me what your favorites are, and we'll just have a good old time with it. Number 5 phone is a phone that I no longer have, but I did use for quite a little bit. The iPhone 8 Plus. There are some pros to this phone. There are some cons to this phone. And I'm going to go through the pros and cons in that order of each phone that's on this list. So we'll start with the iPhone 8 Plus and with the pros. Now, a lot of people kind of dissed the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus when they came out as like, oh, it's the same old design. They've been doing this for 4 years. But I will say this. They sort of perfected that design with those two phones. The 8 Plus offered more value to me than the 8. I don't like those smaller iPhone models because they don't have very good battery life as a rule. And the Plus models do. And I've found them to have the most reliable, beastly batteries of any phone that I've used over a regular basis. And I've had the 6 and a 6S and a 7 and the 8 Plus for a while before I went and got the iPhone 10. The battery life on the Plus models is the least anxiety-inducing of any phone that I've used. The addition of the glass on the front and back of the phone this year gave it a little bit more class, and it also gave it the ability to do some wireless charging. Those are good things. Better late than never. Let's talk about some cons. As much as that glass front and back, and this has been the year of glass front and back phones, as much as the iPhone 8 Plus benefited in the looks department from that addition, it also scratched really easily. I had a scratch on mine within a couple of days, and I was already even using a case. I don't know how it happened. For what it is, the iPhone 8 Plus, pretty darn expensive. I mean, I think the 256 gigabyte model of the iPhone 8 Plus costs $950. $950, $50 more, you get this in its lowest capacity. I think that since they were going to be the B-team phone this year, they should have dropped the price a little bit more on the 8 and 8 Plus, but it's Apple. They didn't. Doesn't have an OLED screen. The LED screens on the iPhones up to this point have never been something that I really thought, oh, this is terrible, but I'll live with it. They've always been really good, really color accurate screens. OLED, though, as we get in here with the iPhone X, is just one step above. I think Apple's actually, even though it was made by Samsung, the way that Apple tuned this screen for its colors and all that is the best OLED screen that I've seen all year. I would have loved to have seen that on an 8 Plus model, on an 8 model. However, I do understand that there's a finite number of OLED screens available in the world, and the capacity to make more is just not here. Apple's paying $120 per screen to Samsung for this. And that's a lot of money, and that may be one of the reasons why it's so expensive. However, it was a compromise to have LED screens on the 8 and 8 Plus. So, And finally, with the 8 Plus, as with the iPhone X, as with many other phones these days, no headphone jack. I am still personally insulted by the removal of the headphone jack, and I know that everybody's sick of hearing me talking about it. I understand that it's the way of the future, but the future is not here, and I want my headphone jack. So it's difficult for me to really rank highly a phone that has no headphone jack. Number 4. The Pixel 2 XL and the 2. I'm going to say both, even though I only use the 2 XL because the 2 is probably the better phone in many ways. But I like bigger phones, and so I don't typically get smaller phones. What are the pros of these two phones? Well, the stock Android experience, while it's not something that really gets me all sort of jingly in the nether regions, a lot of people like it. And it is very clean and very fast, and you can rely on it to be a great experience. It is a little bland, but the phone really performs. The Google launcher that comes stock on these Pixel phones is really clean and functional, and I think probably one of the better launchers available for Android phones. I ended up, even though I don't have it anymore, I liked the squeeze feature on the 2 XL. I still think of that toy. I can't stop myself. The squeeze feature was a great way to launch the Google Assistant that I thought was going to be stupid when I heard that they had built it into the phone. But I actually found myself using it. I mean, it's just something about, you've got the phone in your hand. If you don't want to use your finger and you don't have a button for it, you can just squeeze. And it launches, and then you talk to it. It was very natural as opposed to how clunky I thought it would be. The last pro that I've got for the 2 XL is the battery life. Android phones are not always known to have great battery life, but the 2 XL was absolutely a beastly monster of battery life. I never found myself worrying about, do I have enough battery left to get through the rest of the day? And it did have some super fast charging that allowed you to top it up. But that will transition us into the cons. The biggest con for the 2 XL for me is the screen. Now, as I mentioned, LG makes some OLED screens, and Samsung makes some OLED screens. This is a Samsung OLED screen. This is a Samsung OLED screen. The LG screens are prone to what we would call the blue shift of death, where you turn the phone off at all off axis. Here's the LG V30, which isn't turned on right now. If you turn the phone at all off axis, like just really go like that, everything turns blue. Some people say it doesn't bother them. It bothers the hell out of me. I figure if I'm paying, the Google Pixel 2 XL in the higher capacity is $950. If I'm paying $950 for a wonky screen that looks blue when it shouldn't. The last few cons that really sent the Pixel 2 XL out the door for me were A, its price, which I've already discussed, B, the fact that Google, like Apple, seems to think that expandable storage is not something that should be offered. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Nexus phones that came before these had expandable storage. And so now that Google is making a more premium product and putting their name on it, they decided to take away that feature that now almost every other Android product out there has. This has it. This has it. Almost every phone out there has it, but Google has decided, no, we're not going to offer expandable storage, and it just doesn't make any sense. The final tick against the Pixel 2 XL, and the Pixel for that matter, is no wireless charging. Wireless charging, wireless charging, wireless charging, wireless charging everywhere, but Google, the people who made the phones, who run the operating system, no wireless charging. Doesn't make any sense. You tell me down in the comments if it makes any sense to you. So that brings us to number 3, and you will see here that I have 3 phones left on the table. So of the top 3, you can make a pretty educated guess that the 3 that are here are the top 3. And it's at this point that it becomes really difficult to rank one above the other, and I had to start using my own personal preferences on what I need and want from a phone. LG and its V30. This is number 3 phone for me, although it could have just as easily perhaps been number 2 or number 1, depending on how things shook out. But the phone world was so competitive this year. The LG V30, I mean, LG pretty much gets ignored by the masses when it comes to the phones they make. But people who pay attention, people in the know, they look at this phone and they say it's got an incredible quad DAC that makes everything sound better. This is the best sounding phone for headphones of any phone that I've ever used. Even the V-Series phones from before. The V-Series phones from before, the V10 and the V20, if you used your DAC, your battery was going to die. And that's one of the reasons that they had removable batteries in those phones. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons. I found that the DAC in this version of the phone is A, better than those two, and B, doesn't drain the battery like that. So if you are a music lover, if you're somebody who seriously listens to a ton of music on your phone, the V30 is really just about the only choice for you. If you're a camera person, if you're somebody who loves to take pictures and wants to have some of the best picture-taking abilities, this is also a fantastic phone that you can get deep into the features of the camera on this phone. It has both a more standard lens, but then it also has, as opposed to this phone and a lot of other phones out there, a wide-angle lens instead of a telephoto. And the wide-angle lens can be very, very useful. I found myself using it quite a bit. If you're somebody who has an expensive pair of headphones that are not very sensitive, you know, in the 200 to 300 ohm range, then this is the only phone that will drive them without something external. Let's talk a little bit about the cons, since we've gone through the pros. The screen is a con, and that goes straight back to what we discussed about the Pixel 2 XL. LG made that screen, LG makes this screen in this phone, and I think they're probably the very same screen. And while the first V30 that I had didn't really have a problem with the blue shift that I noticed. In fact, when the Pixel 2 XL came out and I heard about all this, you know, screen stuff, I took my V30 into the Verizon store and compared the Pixel 2 XL to the V30 and found that my V30 looked there was almost no perceptible blue shift compared to the Pixel 2 XL. However, when I got this phone, which is the V30 Plus, when I got this phone, the blue shift was as bad as the Pixel 2 XL. So maybe it's a quality control thing. It's really hard to tell. At any rate, I go on record once again as saying that should not be something that happens this phone was $800, well, this phone, the V30 Plus, it's like $900 something. Shouldn't have a problem with the screen. The regular V30, $800, you shouldn't have a problem with the screen. That's what I'm saying. Another thing I don't like about the V-Series phones and LG phones in general is the LG skin that they use over Android. It's kind of pastel-y, it's kind of It's not very functional. I don't like it at all. LG has just not gotten better at doing that kind of stuff over the years, while Samsung has really improved their overlay. It's unfortunate. And again, at the end of the day, while LG makes really great phones, they are never going to compete price-wise with the big boys like Samsung and Apple. I think LG will sell a lot more phones and convert a lot more people to LG phones by offering them at a lower price. Now, I haven't seen their books. I don't know what it costs to make these phones. I don't know what they need their profit margins to be. But $900 and something for this phone? Nah. It does have expandable storage though. And this is 128 gigabytes plus, another, well, it says it can go up to 2 gigabytes, but, really, 128 and 128, that gets you 256. You could get a 256 gig card, but then that's like $150 to get a decent one. You have options, and this has a feature set that will really please a lot of people. We move the V30 off to the side. Number 3, you can argue with me in the comments, but number 3 this year, which leaves these two phones. And I gotta admit, the choice between these two phones was incredibly difficult for me. Here we have the Note 8. It's such a powerful phone. It offers the S Pen. It offers a lot that can really recommend it to a large number of people. And here's the iPhone 10. The phone that I thought was probably going to be a disaster and maybe like a nail in the coffin of Apple turned out to be a really great phone. And a phone that I really enjoyed using, and I found it was functional and easy to use in ways that I didn't think it would be able to be. However, the iPhone 10 comes in, now just settle down, as my number 2 phone of the year. Could have easily been the number 1, but I ultimately went with a phone that helps me through my day a little bit more than this one does. This is a great everyday phone for a lot of people. iOS is simple to get around. iOS is simple to use. The iPhone 10 is elegant, well built. The gestures work really well, and the Face ID is better than I ever thought it could be. So the pros of this are the interface, because it's almost seamless. And then the display, which is a little bit more true to life than this display. The build is great. But fragile, as we've discussed with other glass sandwich phones. Face ID works fantastically. The camera is great. There's really not very much more than personal taste that separates the cameras of these two phones. In fact, you can bring the V30 back in for that. I think they're all very comparable in what they can put out, and it's all just a matter of what you prefer. Now, the Apple ecosystem, the much ballyhooed ecosystem, being able to use this and your Mac computers and your MacBooks and your iPads and your Apple Watch and all that stuff, and all of them being pretty seamlessly tied together, that is always a very impressive and convenient way. Just being able to send photos and videos from this to my computer at the touch of a button without having to plug anything in. The ecosystem is really a selling point for this, and if you're an all-in Apple-only person, the ecosystem is really great. Face ID works better than it ever probably should have. I thought it was going to be terrible, and it works really well. There are times when it's a little slow or it doesn't quite get my face, but there are also times when it unlocks apps for me instead of using a fingerprint or putting in a password. Face ID is really great at just being there to work whenever you need it to work. On that level, I really appreciate it, and I think they knocked it out of the park. But that is not to say that everything about the iPhone 10 is perfect. The build, as I said, while being very nice, very premium, is also very scratchable, very breakable, and very expensive to fix. And I think that's something that you'll have to consider when deciding to make a purchase for this phone over other phones. I mean, my top 3 phones here are all glass front and back. I think that of the three, the V30 seems to be, for some reason, the more durable, but hard to say. The fact that there's no headphone jack on this phone really pisses me off. I feel insulted by the lack of the headphone jack. I've gone into it in other videos in much more depth than I feel like going into here. But taking away the headphone jack was a stupid thing to do, and it will remain stupid for years to come. Wireless headphones aren't as good as wired headphones. Period. They are more convenient, but they don't sound very good. A lot of people seem to not like this notification, or this control panel being up here. It doesn't bother me, but they have expanded the usability of the control panel. The friggin' screen recording button right here is great. But overall, iOS, I think, if you're comparing iOS to Android, you can get more going with Android, and so I'm going to leave that as a con here, although it's not one that bothers me. The one thing that was the ultimate deciding factor for me with the iPhone X, while it feels really good to hold, and it seems like a natural size, at the end of the day, it was too small for me. Not as small as the 4.7-inch versions. The screen size is great, all that kind of stuff. I just like a bigger phone. And that's why the Note 8 is my favorite phone of the year. It's not perfect. Biometrics on this thing suck donkey, you know. Note 8, phone of the year for me, the JTL. Are you surprised? Does this surprise you? I've said a lot of really nice things about the iPhone, but at the end of the day, when I started to make this list, I realized how much value the Note 8 offered me in the way that I need and want to use a phone from day to day. So, the crown. Tell me what you think down in the comments. Let me know what you think of it and what your favorite phone of the year was and why down in the comments. I want the why. I don't want those comments to just say, you're stupid. You know, this has been a huge year of growth for Painfully Honest Tech. At the beginning of 2017, I had 2,000 subscribers, and now I'm closing in on 30,000. That just blows my mind, and it makes me so happy to have connected with so many people. I hope you'll all stick around and sub and follow me on Twitter and spread the word and to help build this community a little bit more. It's just been a pleasure for me to make these videos and to have so many good people out there appreciating them. Thanks again for being here with me. I really do appreciate it. My name's Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest, it hurts. Until the next time, as you know, I am out.